Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Major Applications Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Eddie Lavery, the Committee Chairman. I do welcome you all here to the Civic Centre tonight. I presume most of you have got an interest in a couple of the items. I will do the normal committee administration first. I will then explain how the meeting will work before we deal with the items. Can I have apologies for absence first, please?
Apologies from Councillor Steve Tuckwell with Councillor Nicola Brightman substituting, and apologies from Councillor Janet Duncan with Councillor Robin Sansapuri substituted.
Thank you. Can I have declarations of interest in matters coming before tonight's meeting? I've got two hands up. I'll start on my right with Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. I need to declare a non-pecuniary interest in item number 9. I will be leaving the room.
Okay. Is that because you've had prior knowledge of the scheme?
Yes, indeed, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Yarra?
Thank you, Chairman. Mine is similar. I have a non-pecuniary interest in agenda item 6. I shall leave the meeting and will not be voting.
Thank you. Can I just take the minutes of our previous meeting, 30th of January, as agreed? Agreed. Thank you. All matters tonight are in part 1 and in public. We are taking all the matters that were listed in the Head of Planning report that was issued last week. The only change to the running order is that item 9, which is the former Master Brewer site at Friesland Way, Hillingdon, is now a petition item, and as such that will be the second item we will hear tonight. So we will start with item 6, we'll move to item 9, and then we'll do 7, 8 and 10. Okay? So that's the running order. This meeting is live on the Council's YouTube website. In this chamber, it basically works that once you are speaking into a microphone, the camera should be coming your way. So hopefully now what is on the feed is me, but we'll find out later. I would also remind those who are in the audience, particularly those who are sitting immediately behind the rows with microphones on, that when the people in those rows are speaking, you may well be visible as well. But that's the setup of this room. We're not expecting a fire drill tonight, so if we hear a fire alarm, we will be leaving. The fire exits are clearly signposted all the way around this building, and the officer team will lead us out as we go. Can I please ask that all mobile phones are switched off or at least silent? There are resident feedback forms. They're the orange forms that I saw at the back of the room on my way in. Could I also ask, please, we will obviously have a little bit of switching around because people, as you've seen, Councillor Yarrow's now left the meeting because we're about to do the item he's declared an interest in. But could I ask that when the item you're interested in is over, we do have a very big agenda tonight and another meeting to follow this, that you leave quietly and don't congregate immediately outside. My apologies that the acoustics in this room are not always the greatest. The councillors making the decision, regrettably, will have their backs to you, but that's the only way we can set this room up because it's set up for formal council meetings and everybody faces forward. You will see that the only desks with microphones are the ones with the ward councillors on, the applicants and petitioners. In terms of speaking rights for tonight's meeting, the rights to address this meeting, as it's effectively it's a meeting held in public, it's not a public meeting, are only as set out in the Council's constitution, as summarised in the committee papers and as I will outline in a moment. All members of the committee have had this rather large bundle, which they will have read. There will be an officer presentation which will be on the screen behind me, so hopefully you'll all be able to see that. For the petition items, we have received 6 petitions in respect of the item number 6, and I am allowing 3 speakers on that item. For each item where there is a petition, speakers get 5 minutes. The traffic lights will guide you. 4 green, 1 amber, you get to red, you're done. Members may ask you questions, they may not. If they've understood what you said, you haven't raised anything massively new, they will let it go, but they may choose to ask you questions. I know the developers in both cases are planning to speak tonight. Same rules apply to you. You're getting 5 minutes each. And again, members may choose to ask you questions, they may choose not to. If anybody raises new issues that require an answer from planning officers, I don't take that out of your speaking time. We will deal with that at the end of your speaking. Once you've finished your speech, that is your right to address the meeting over. We don't have a backwards and forwards discussion as the debate moves on. So hopefully that is clear to everybody. In the case of the second item, the former Master Brewer site, Friesland Way, Hillingdon, I have received 3 petitions and we're allowing 10 minutes speaking time on that item for the petitioners. Developers, again, will get 5 minutes to address us. For absolute clarity, and I'll say it now to save me saying it as the meeting goes on, we are not accepting any additional handouts or material from either applicants or petitioners. That is in line with our standard rule where we ask them to be in at least 48 hours in advance. So anything that has come into us more than 48 hours in advance and was circulated will have been circulated to members already, but I will not allow any additional distributions tonight. The reason for that is straightforward. It tends to add confusion. It also means we're looking at material that officers haven't had a chance to evaluate, and it can skew a debate one way or the other and give us erroneous information on occasions. So hopefully all of that lot is clear. I think I've covered all the items. Now, the voting councillors tonight, and I say they have got their backs to you, so you're going to have to look at their heads all night. I'm going to go this way round just to go right to left. Councillor Chapman, Councillor Rydier, the missing Councillor Yarrow, Councillor Brightman, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Oswald, Councillor Morse and Councillor Sansapuri. The officer team tonight, Glenn Egan is our legal advisor, Elisa Tedgy from Democratic Services is our clerk, James Roger, the head of planning, will chip in with advice as required, and Deep Malhotra, the major applications manager, is our presenter, and Richard Machelski is our highways officer, and they will answer questions as required and as directed. Okay, I think with all of that done, we are ready to go. So if I can move please to item 6, land off Harefield Road. If I could, one final plea to everybody. I have managed to get the place absolutely quiet now, and it's absolutely fantastic. If we could keep the audience that way, it's good, because otherwise you will struggle to hear what is going on in the debate and what is going on in the presentations. Some councillors are pretty good at competing with an audience, others are less good. It just depends which one it is. And the same for officers. Okay, can I move please now to item 6, land off Harefield Road, Uxbridge, page 9 of the report. Find it when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I wanted to draw your attention to the addendum on this item, primarily to highlight a few things. There are some report tidy up changes, but there are also key significant changes in terms of dropping reason for refusal number 1. The Ministry of Defence have written to the Council and removed their objection. With regard to 2 other conditions, condition number 5, we wanted to add reference to the National Planning Policy Frameworks in view of any future potential appeal. And with regard to refusal reason number 15, there was an inaccuracy in the report. There is a daylight and sunlight report, and therefore the reason for refusal has been changed to be more accurate and reflect the findings of the report. I'll take you through the presentation briefly. The application site is within the Uxbridge Town Centre. Easiest way to reference it is the Halford and Wick site next door to the police station. The plan on screen denotes the conservation area to the south, the brown buildings being listed and locally listed buildings surrounding the site.
Chairman, can the lady speak up, please? Yeah.
Should I try and use this?
Go on. Do your best, man.
Hello?
The acoustics in this room are not fantastic, so we'll just have to work with what we've got.
Hello? Okay, no, not working?
I use that one, Mandy. Portable mics don't appear to be great.
Okay, sorry about that, and I will try harder to be louder. I will have to turn away from you in order to know what's on the slides, though. This is the application site as existing, so the forecourt, wrong button. Forecourt comprises the car parking, and the building footprint is in this location, with the Halfords and the Wicks subdivided internally. The application site, for information, extends to include what is currently a blocked up vehicular access route and you'll see through the proposals that it is actually proposed to reopen that so that there is actually a pedestrian route which would allow residents to access from the proposed site down into the high street. And that's an access that doesn't exist at the moment. This is the proposed site location plan. The ground floor plan is easier to decipher that there are 3 proposed blocks, one fronting onto Harefield Road, one located to the rear of the gardens on Lancaster Road, and the tallest of the blocks is located in the centre of the site where the existing stores are located. This is just a series of the first floor plan, the second floor plan, the third floor, the fourth floors, and you can see as we climb up the building, the quantum of development does reduce to primarily the centre of the site. We take you to the top floors, which are the 10th and the 11th floor, so the equivalent of the 12th storey of this building. This is the area of greatest mass. This is the proposed roof plan and the landscaping plan at the application site. So the proposal does also include amenity areas, play space at ground floor level, and then there are a series of roof terraces throughout the proposed development. These are the northwest elevations. Sorry, so this is the Harefield Road elevation. These are the existing residential properties adjoining the site, so that would otherwise be the current vehicular access and parking area. This is the southeast elevation and the internal courtyard elevations, northwest internal courtyards and a section through the building, and the southwest elevations. This is the block to the rear of the Lancaster Road properties, the front and the rear elevations, and further sections. Again, another plan denoting the general arrangement of the ground floor, and this was clearly primarily to try and identify where the public pedestrian access would be created. So it's an access that doesn't exist at the moment. We have a few photos of the application site. I apologise that they're not overly interesting, and I'm sure most of you know the site. So this is the front elevation of Halfords with the gradient that leads up to the store. Again, the car parking area, wider view of the site, and that's the locally listed magistrates' courts. This is the panorama development located at the Marjax roundabout, and that's Harefield Road. This is the police station which directly adjoins the site. The application proposes the erection of 3 blocks, with the tallest block proposed to be 12 storeys in height. The development would create 267 self-contained units in the build-to-rent model. The proposal does also include landscaping, public realm works and provision of 9 accessible car parking spaces. The proposals have been amended through the application process to increase the level of residential development by 3 units and alter the design of the buildings. This is despite the development having an unacceptably low level of 3 and 4 bedroom family units and a very high number of single small bedroom units. The proposed scheme is considered to be an overdevelopment of the site, resulting in an unacceptable level of density, a detrimental impact on heritage assets and the character of the locality, a detrimental impact on the neighbouring residents, insufficient standard of living for future occupiers, and unacceptable drainage strategies and waste arrangements, not including, obviously, the issues of the lack of car parking provision. As such, the proposed scheme fails to accord with planning policies and is recommended for refusal.
Okay. I don't know which of the petitioners is going first. If you would just so we know where we are, just as you start, if you just state your name. If you press the right-hand button on the microphone in front of you, it should light up. Good. And we're good to go.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Manoli Freire, and I'm a lead petitioner for Lancaster Road, which is a road that is obviously affected directly by the proposed development. We submitted some photos. I wasn't sure if it's possible to show them on the screen. I've got them in large print, but I'm not sure how easy it will be for people to see them, unless you have...
They have been circulated already to members, and we do have hard copies up here, so if you want to carry on.
That's fine. People can refer to them in that case. I will refer to them directly. They're numbered, so you should be able to identify them. Photo number 1 shows a current view from a back garden about halfway down Lancaster Road. Photo number 2 shows a view from the same window with the proposed buildings in the way. The 12-storey building is not even shown due to its full large scale. There is a significant difference to the building that currently occupies the site, being the Halfords and Wicks. Even the lower 4-storey proposed block would be much lower than the current Wicks building. It would mean that the back gardens of the houses in Lancaster Road will be completely overlooked by a large proportion of the residents of the proposed development. Furthermore, the height and rear access to the flats via walkways would mean the constant flow of people in and out of their homes right on the boundary of the already existing Lancaster Road properties. Families living in Lancaster Road would also feel more vulnerable when their children play in their gardens. Light pollution at night is a further concern. The security lights on the walkways of the proposed development would be either constantly on, or they would be coming on and off as people leave or arrive at their flats. Photo number 3. This is a superimposed image of the proposed development in situ. You can clearly see that the size and bulk of the proposed design would completely dominate the landscape, and its design is not sympathetic or to a similar scale and proportion to anything that's already existing in the area. Photo number 4 shows the shadow over the gardens from the 8-storey building, and this was taken in November. This shows that the gardens would be pretty much in total darkness throughout the winter. And this doesn't take into consideration the additional height of the 12-storey building. In the officer's report, section 7.08, impact on neighbours, subheading daylight and sunlight, this suggests that the applicant's assessment is that the development will have a minimal effect on daylight and sunlight. However, the report only references 14 to 16 Harefield Road as being adversely affected, but does not make any mention of Lancaster Road. We believe that the height of the proposed towers will also have an adverse effect on the daylight for the residents of Lancaster Road. Photo number 5 shows the current view towards Harefield Road. The proposed development runs all the way along the back of the houses in Lancaster Road, as well as a block facing Harefield Road. Currently, you can see through the trees into the car park and the outside of Wicks and Halfords, but this view would be completely obstructed by a solid building running all the way along the full length of the north boundary of the proposed development. In summary, we believe that the proposed development will be an eyesore to the current town centre landscape. It's not in keeping with the general look and particularly the height of the surroundings. There are no other large buildings in the town centre which impose on residential properties in this way. It will also have a significant detrimental effect on the privacy of the houses and gardens in Lancaster Road particularly, who will also suffer from loss of natural light for a large part of the day, as well as creating a disturbance during the nights when the building lights will be on. We feel that the developers have not taken into consideration the significant impact on the already existing homes in Lancaster Road, or the impact on the surrounding area, and we therefore strongly object to the proposals and request that planning is denied. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? No? Thank you very much. Can I have the second speaker, please?
Good evening, Chairman, committee members. I'm Sue Lambell, lead petitioner on behalf of Pages Lane and Prince's Mansions. Our belief is that the proposal would be an overdevelopment of the site, being too large, too high, not in keeping with the character of the surroundings, adding pressure to already overloaded public services and infrastructure, and involves the loss of 2 valued retail outlets. And as such, we support the report's view to reject this application. Wicks and Halfords have been valuable edge-of-town suppliers for private and professional customers for some 25 years, and indeed have sought to extend their leases by 15 years, demonstrating their confidence in continuing demand in this location. The nearest equivalents are 6 miles away. The loss of some 2,700 square metres of retail space is an inadequate offering for a mixed-use development on this site, and the removal of the mature landscaping will be a sad loss of the current softening of the border between retail and residential areas. A consequence of the recent substantial growth in Uxbridge housing stock, including developments such as St Andrews Park, is a huge pressure on local schools, GPs and other essential services. Sadly, this increase in stock has not led to enhancements in the size and scope of our GP practices, and until we can provide a suitable level of such vital services, we shouldn't be adding to the strain and indeed exacerbating the situation with another massive development. The addition of some 500 new occupiers walking into Uxbridge is going to put a lot of pressure on the already crowded pavements, and our road network does not allow for cycle paths or similar solutions. The scale of the scheme disregards the nearby low-level heritage, listed, buildings of special character and conservation area and diminishes their historical significance, adversely affecting the character of the neighbourhood. Add to this the topographical conditions of the site on an incline and the fact that other taller buildings and more intensive development sites are located in the lower lying areas, which has considerably reduced their impact, and you can see that there has been scant regard for the existing two-storey dwellings immediately surrounding the site. The nature of the proposal is for a gated development with privately accessed ground floor uses, which is insular, leading to poor integration with the local strong community, and it fails to contribute to local regeneration. Not only does this project negatively affect current occupiers, but the cramped layout leaves little outside amenity space for prospective occupiers, much of which is combined use by service vehicles and bin storage. Many of the units are single aspect, and since the blocks are so close together, privacy is compromised and there will be limited opportunity for natural light, a surprising decision in our times of improved energy conservation and sustainability awareness and the known adverse impact on emotional health and well-being of oppressive surroundings. Chairman, in summary, we've demonstrated that this proposal is detrimental to both existing and future residents, and we ask you, please, to back the Planning Officer's recommendation to reject this scheme.
Members have any questions? No? No hands going up. Good.
Chairman, my name is Jackie Whitmore, petitioner on behalf of Kent Close, Uxbridge. I have two issues to present. Firstly, car parking. It is beyond comprehension that a car-free development was ever considered for this site. Yes, such developments can be an attractive option in central and inner London boroughs where use of public transport is likely to be the norm. However, it is totally unsuitable for this outer London area. For the proposal to include only 8 accessible residential and 1 commercial space is frankly ludicrous. Just 9 spaces for 267 homes. The proposal is not even in accordance with our council's adopted standards, which were reaffirmed in July 2017. Hillingdon Council thinks that up to 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling is reasonable. Why should developers override our council's logic? Our elected representatives and council officers know the area well and the problems that already exist with parking on our overcrowded streets. Even though the council is to exempt future residents' eligibility for local parking permits, it is highly likely that there would be abuse of existing parking restrictions if this development goes ahead. The end result would be on-street parking spilling further into local residential areas, sparking serious concerns about vehicle and pedestrian safety. Local residents already struggle to park, particularly in front of or near to their homes. New residents are expected to use bicycles or public transport. But what about those needing to avail convenient major road links, such as the M4, M25 and A40/M40 corridors? Being able to use public transport or getting on a bike is not always a viable or suitable option. Travel to and from Uxbridge by car can often be a necessity, especially for those with babies and young families. The same applies to the elderly, disabled and those with special needs, particularly if being accompanied by carers and supporting equipment such as wheelchairs. Emergency vehicles and medical staff, including carers carrying out both urgent and other home visits, will need to be able to easily access and park at the site. Regular commercial vehicles, including refuge collectors, utility inspection and repairs and home deliveries, will also require the same facility. A presumption that they and other visitors to the development will always use public car parks is totally unrealistic. Secondly, traffic congestion. With new residents will come a rise in online shopping customers. Many commercial vehicles, in particular supermarkets and other retail store vehicles, will need to make their deliveries. The result of this increase will be further traffic congestion, with vehicles regularly entering and exiting the proposed development. If the site is to be gated, as mentioned in the technical report, then traffic queues are more than likely to form in Harefield Road as they wait to be allowed entry into the site. Harefield Road already suffers from constant rush hour traffic and congestion, with vehicles both heading into and leaving Uxbridge via the A40/Swakeleys roundabout. Rush hour queues heading up towards the top end of Harefield Road often start forming mid-afternoon. The extra road traffic caused by all additional vehicle visits would increase this congestion to nightmarish proportions. On Sunday, at the lower end of Harefield Road, when the restrictions do not apply, a large increase of car parking on both sides of the road regularly occurs and often results in two-way traffic being reduced to single file. Both buses and emergency vehicles frequently struggle to get through this bottleneck. From a safety perspective, this congestion is very likely to be the cause of a road traffic accident, and any further overflow parking would most certainly exacerbate this issue. Removing the two stores regularly used by both private and commercial customers from the said site would not reduce traffic congestion within the borough. In fact, without these stores, I and others would need to make additional car/commercial vehicle journeys to, for example, a retail park in South Ruislip, an area which already experiences bad traffic congestion. Trying to carry heavy goods home on public transport for either myself or less able shoppers would not be viable or realistic. This application should most definitely be refused for the reasons stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? I haven't seen any coming. Okay. Can I please now have whoever is speaking on behalf of the agent or the applicant for this one? No? No? Oh. Over there. Yeah, wherever. Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. As long as they've got. If you light your microphone up when you're ready, we'll work the world.
Good evening, all. I'm Ian Smith, Planning Director at the Watkin Jones Group. I'm joined by Ben Wright of Turley. The group is a 228-year-old residential developer. We undertake our own construction and manage our completed developments. Our build-to-rent developments, or BTR as they're commonly known, are managed under the 59 Living brand. We forward sell our developments to an institutional fund, who then return a long-term interest in the site, and we manage it for them. We have an enviable delivery record across the UK. We have developed in 11 London boroughs. Over 95% of our developments are on site within 6 months of the grant's permission. Whilst build-to-rent as a defined asset class is relatively new, it is now embedded in national planning policy. 59 has 5 operational schemes and 5 schemes under construction, including within Reading and Sutton metropolitan centres. This site offers all the characteristics of what results in a successful build-to-rent development. It is highly accessible and sits within a vibrant metropolitan centre as defined on the Council's proposals map. It provides easy access for occupiers to shops, services and employment. The scheme includes a gym, lounge and business suite for residents, as well as a series of external landscaped amenity areas for residents. The development will not be gated. Whilst with internet shopping and many of the bulkier goods companies offering delivery services, planning policies now recognise that retail parks are increasingly becoming redundant. They also recognise that retail parks are inaccessible accessible edge-of-centre locations not formally protected by planning policy. They are sustainable locations for optimised residential developments which can bring a range of economic benefits. It was these attributes which attracted us to this site, enabling us to deliver a quantum of units typical of a BTR scheme and aligning with density matrices for a town centre site. We fully appreciate and recognise that this development will certainly change the townscape from a low-density retail park, which has resulted in significant interest in the proposals. We have not lost sight of policy requirements for such underused town centre sites. The scheme which you are considering today is the result of 18 months of discussions with your officers, the GLA and other interested parties. Changes and improvements to the scheme have been made in response to the comments we've received, evidenced by a reduction in the number of residential units from over 300 initially to 267. The GLA Stage 1 report offers significant support. It identifies a small number of areas requiring refinement, which our officer's report focuses upon. Following receipt of the report only 2 weeks ago, we have duly undertaken such refinements, and these will be formally submitted to the GLA. I hand over to Ben.
Thank you. Good evening. Making the best use of previously developed sites in highly accessible locations such as this in metropolitan town centres has benefited from planning policy support for many years. Such sites limit the pressure that can be brought to bear on alternative locations for much needed housing growth, such as greenfield sites and the Greenbelt. Council now faces new housing targets up to 1,553 units per annum, and this site is clearly one that can be brought forward quickly. It's a scheme that satisfies a range of identified housing needs in the rental sector and could meet 17% of the Council's annual housing target in years to come. Our legal advisors have recently written to your officers highlighting a number of concerns relating to aspects of the report, and these should be considered carefully prior to making a decision tonight. The officers' report misjudged government policy on heritage, misunderstood aspects of the amended design, and simply missed supporting information. We've also subsequently noticed that the 46 new trees being proposed, which is a net increase of 61% on site, is completely missed off the officers' report and should be adequate mitigation for the loss of 6 Grade B trees. It is notable that the GLA considers that the scheme is in accordance with much of the London plan, whereas your officers take a very different interpretation. The density interpretation is misleading, for example. The site's within a metropolitan centre with PTEL5 and is at least defined as an urban designation, allowing for up to 700 habitable rooms per hectare. The proposals at 693 habitable rooms per hectare is within this guidance, and this urban categorisation for the site is consistent with your officer's view on other planning permissions secured in Uxbridge in the last year or so. The notion of overdevelopment cannot be concluded on this density basis alone, as it has been done so in the committee report. Furthermore, there are a number of reasons for refusal that are set out that could be addressed through further negotiation. An example of this is the MOD, which was only withdrawn yesterday. This is a complex mixed-use scheme in a varied metropolitan centre context. We sought to make changes where possible. As currently negotiated, the proposals support 1.9 million additional new homes bonus, over 400,000 council tax per annum. It's going to support 6.5 million of new local area spending each year and generates over 2.5 million worth of SIL. It includes 53 affordable homes. We've had very limited time to respond to the council's latest
We are at time, so could I ask you just to wrap up?
Okay, thank you. We would be happy to support the principle of Section 106 heads of terms I've set out in the report recently, if you were so minded to approve tonight. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? I will pick up the comments about the legal thing in a moment.
I have just the one, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and that is with regards to the gated access. You're saying it's not gated access, whereas the report indicates that it is. Does this mean that the residents will have access then to the ground floor units, the mixed use of the development, or is that just reserved for residents?
The ground floor elements of this development, apart from the commercial units, will be used entirely by residents of the development, and you're quite correct, and the gates have been removed about 2 or 3 months ago following discussions with your officers.
Councillor Moores?
I notice that the council officers have made several efforts to negotiate compromises with your development. Do you feel that you have cooperated and negotiated in any form at all?
I feel that we have. We have listened, and we're 18 months into discussions at this point in time as we speak here today. The size of the scheme has roughly come down by about 15%, and we still, all the technical issues have been assessed, and we're still of the opinion that there's a planning policy push, obviously, at a variety of different levels for efficient use of highly accessible sites, and we believe we're doing just that.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands, so I will stop it there. The last bit on this, Councillor Goddard.
Chairman, before I get into my slot, can I just ask, there was a submission during the course of today of a proposed amendment to one of the reasons to refusal.
The Head of Planning will deal with that at the end.
Okay, I just want to clarify whether that's been received.
It has been received, but it is not supported by the Head of Planning.
Okay, fine. Chairman, thank you. It is clear that there's a pressing need to increase housing stock in London. The London Borough of Hillingdon, however, has responsibly and comfortably exceeded its annual target of 559 new homes year after year. At December 2017, our outlook for the next 5 years indicated an overachievement of 1,901 homes, or 176% of the minimum supply target. The Mayor of London's draft plan, if adopted, would indeed give us more challenging targets, but we don't have to resort to deeply flawed, overdeveloped and high-density schemes such as this one to make our numbers. In any event...
Could I ask that you let the councillor finish, otherwise he's going to his time you're eating into.
I'm going to hit there. In any event, this scheme fails to address the fundamental need, as the proposed 267 units over half are single occupancy and only 13 units are of 3 bedrooms. Chairman and committee members, this application displays a total and cynical disregard for the interests of Uxbridge residents. The zero-car approach proposed for this development draws upon the Mayor of London's draft plan. As an outer London borough with minimal public transport facilities for travel to the west of Uxbridge, this is just not viable. If this regime is imposed, it's likely to be abused, with the inevitable consequences for overspill parking and increased traffic congestion. 8 and 12-storey buildings overshadow homes of those living in Lancaster Road. I'll return to this point later. We lose 2 valuable retail sites. There's an unacceptable strain imposed on local resources. There's harm to heritage assets and local character. You've heard from 3 petitioners this evening. You could equally have heard for 3 more. In total, there were 6 petitions in opposition, signed by 298 local residents, all living in the immediate vicinity of this site. A further 142 comments in objection were also received, with a further 143 in the second phase. By contrast, 46 comments were received in support, most of which would appear to have come from students who will not necessarily be residents in the medium to longer term. The applicants submitted a glossy 29-page statement of community involvement. No doubt an exercise in box ticking, as it shows that 11 residents were spoken to, and 6 of those gave opinions, and even the balance of this was adverse. No doubt they'd hoped wrongly that we would share their lack of attention to the interests of our residents. Chairman, the message is clear. The residents of Hillingdon do not want this development. I request that officers and the committee consider and adopt additional wording in the refusal number 7 to indicate the basis of loss of privacy and undue overshadowing of the houses in Lancaster Road. I provided a proposed draft. In summary, members of the Planning Committee, I urge you to support the Planning Officer's recommendations and refuse this application.
And then the legal officer. Okay, let me just start this off before I bring members in. The Ward Councillor refers to a request for an additional refusal reason which did relate to, and for the sake of completeness I will just read what he suggested. The proposal, by reason of its scale mass design, is considered to result in over-dominance and have a detrimental general impact on the residential amenities of the existing properties, and specifically result in loss of privacy and undue overshadowing of Lancaster Road houses, blah, blah. I know the planning officers have a view on that, so I'm going to ask the Head of Planning to give us his reasoning why he thinks that shouldn't be an additional reason at this time.
So there's an average distance of approximately 40 metres between the development and the Lancaster Road properties. I say average because obviously we're dealing with a large number of properties. In your officer's view, the issue is one that the size and scale of the development, it will represent an over-dominant development proposal, but we think it will be over-dominant to not just residents in Lancaster Road, but to other properties around the site. And when there are a large number of properties affected, we wouldn't, in a refusal reason, start specifying particular properties. It just it can actually work against us and undermine the direction of travel, which is in this case that we actually think there's a large number of properties impacted upon. In terms of the privacy issue, what the developer has done is there's a lot of flats that are single aspect or have obscure glazing, and so, but what happens when you've got a very high density of developments, by trying to overcome one concern, which is why officers aren't referencing privacy on Lancaster Road, you end up with other issues in terms of daylight and sunlight and internal privacy levels and outlook. So what I would say as an overall point is, although we are removing the air safeguarding refusal reason, because obviously the relevant statutory consultees have withdrawn their objection, I do think there is 15 very sound refusal reasons, and I was actually just going to say as a general point, I can't remember, and I've been presenting to committee since 2006 as actually having a report with so many refusal reasons. So I certainly wouldn't be encouraging members to add to the reasons, because I think we've pretty much covered every single angle on this particular one. If I may I comment on landscaping, Chairman? Because there was a point raised by the applicant that I believe they were effectively saying they thought that refusal reason 13 on landscaping wasn't justified because officers hadn't taken into account the new tree planting. I think there's a point being missed here. The reason officers have concern is that our policies expect developers to look at retaining topographical and landscape features, and what the developer's done in this case is they are wiping out all existing trees on the site, and it's that which is what's reflected in the objection from the landscape council's own landscape architect. Now, I do appreciate the council's landscape architect hasn't gone into detail regarding the merit of the new tree planting, but there's a reason for this, which is because there's a fundamental concern regarding the loss of all the existing B-grade trees on the site, and therefore I'm quite happy with refusal reason 13. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. The developers in their proposal did reference some legal questions about whether we had considered stuff, whether we had responded to stuff, etc. So I think it's only appropriate I should ask the council's legal advisor, Glenn, to just pass some brief comments.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I think it's important for committee to be reminded that there's a statutory procedure that has to be followed when a planning application is made. And that means that the report that's considered by members is published at least 5 clear working days in advance. Check the date of publication, that was last Monday, so that requirement was fulfilled. There's no obligation on the council to then go back to developers and say this is or applicants, or indeed to objectors, to say this is the version of the report, would you like to make further comments on it? If the council had to do that, it'd be very, very difficult ever to make a decision ever on any planning, because you'd always be getting more and more comments in. What I can say is I've looked into this, the correct statutory procedure was followed on this case, so I'm quite clear there's a lawful basis for members to make a decision tonight. I think the Chairman, the head of planning, has made comments on the report. If members have any further questions, they should ask those of officers. But certainly from my point of view, there's no impediment to members deciding this application tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that advice is very clear and forthright, so I think we're good with that. Can I start with Councillor Oswald and then Councillor Edwards, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Can I thank the petitioners for their petition? I think we fully understand their feelings. Chairman, this is a comprehensive report. It's full and foremost. And I think we welcome it. And I think the head of planning is absolutely correct with the amount of reasons for refusal. It's a shame that there's going to be a loss of retail space. I've used it myself, and I expect most of the people in this council chamber have as well. But that's already been mentioned by Councillor Goddard as a ward councillor, and rightly so. As far as I'm concerned, Chairman, looking at the CGIs, that's all we can look at, because that's what's been presented. It's out of character and it's not in keeping with what's already there. From time to time, retail space does fail. We know that. Remains unoccupied and can eventually fall into disrepair, vandalism and other uses, which we're all aware of. Yes, we do have a housing requirement in Hillingdon, but I'm afraid it's got to be in the right place and density, and I don't think that it's here, and it's certainly not on this scale. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, I'd just like to come back to the Head of Planning and ask regarding the daylight and sunlight report, which has come in, which we haven't obviously been able to see and is mentioned in the addendum, also picked up by the petitioners, and that is with regards to overshadowing of rear gardens. You didn't mention that at all. Is it the case that the daylight sunlight report has said that there isn't and that you are satisfied, or is this an unresolved area?
The problem is that the BRE guidelines allow a quite large degree of overshadowing of rear gardens, that they're less tolerant when it comes to habitable room windows. And so because you've got relatively long rear gardens and the scale of the development effectively increases towards the middle of the site and reduces towards the edges, it does mean that there isn't a refusal reason there. It's a simple answer.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful for that clarity. And I'm going to try and rise to the challenge of finding some more refusal reasons, if I may, because I think it's important that we do identify all the shortcomings in this application. And I pick up on page 43 comments from the access officer about the design of it and flats being in Block A with only a single lift, which is contrary to our requirements. Are you satisfied that accessibility is adequate for all blocks?
So there are, on page 44, the applicant did respond to the officer's comments in August, and the access officer provided no further comment, so no objection following the revisions and the comments in August. I interpret this as he's making no further comments to that he's already made, not I'm withdrawing my previous objection.
I'll hold that one for a minute. It's a moot point depending on which way it's intended to be written, but yeah.
I think it needs to be clarified because either it's an adequate lifting arrangement for disabled people used in that block, or
I believe we can deal with that as this moves on, but just let's take the rest of it.
I'm sure it can. And the other one is just with regards to the potential development of our beloved police station, which is almost confirmed now is going to go and be redeveloped. I believe we have policies that prevent the development of sites that impinge upon reasonable development of neighbouring sites. This one, our urban design officer clearly identifies the extent of its design and build up to the boundaries is such that it will impinge upon the development of neighbouring sites. Is that not a reason for additional reason for refusal here?
So I'll respond on access. Paragraph section 7.12 does confirm that the council's access officer is happy because he's satisfied, albeit those weren't the words used in the consultee comments on page 42, and we'll try and be clearer in the future. Now, with regard to your second point, neither of these sites are site allocation, so we are identifying through this report that it is inappropriate design. Whether it blights the redevelopment of the police station site is quite a difficult reason to refuse the application, primarily because the block at the front, if I take you to a site plan, this block has been designed and it would not blight or prevent the redevelopment of what is this area of the police station site. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Moores.
Mr. Chairman, I have two questions. One has been solved by the comment that the light report has now come in and it's now a reason for refusal. However, what I want to ask is on page 42 we have issues with surface water discharge and infiltration drainage. Has this been resolved? It's not clear to me.
Which page were you on, sorry, Councillor?
It's on page 42.
42. It just helps to just
get
us back to where we...
another reason for refusal. We're not looking at
it. Is reason for refusal number 10.
Reason for refusal number 10. Officers are giving me. Drainage, yeah. So in other words, it hasn't been resolved.
It hasn't?
It hasn't, no, because it's one of
So
the
that is
refusal
going to be
reasons.
one of our reasons of refusal, yeah?
It is a refusal reason, so yeah.
Thank you.
It hasn't been resolved, because otherwise it wouldn't be in there. Okay,
Yeah.
do members have any more on this one? I'm not sensing any more hands about to go up. Oh, Councillor Oswald's hands, but I suspect I know what it's about to do.
Yeah, I'm going to move the officer's recommendation, Chairman.
I will second. Thank you. So, we have a proposer and a seconder that we accept the officer's recommendation, which refuses this scheme for the now 15 reasons in the report following the addendum. Can all those in favour of refusal please clearly indicate to me? Thank you very much. That application is refused. Thank you. Okay. I'm now going to move to item 9. Could you... Councillor Yarrow, if I could have you down here, I need to get this moving. If those leaving could leave quietly for me, I'd be grateful, because I do need to move on. I'm now going to move to the former Master Brewer site, Freedom Way, Hillingdon, which is item 9 in tonight's pack. Maddy, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. If I can direct you to the addendum on this item, primarily it is housekeeping, but we have, since the publication of this committee report, received 3 petitions, as well as 10 additional individual representations and 1 additional consultee's letter from the local MP. Otherwise, it is generally just housekeeping on this application in terms of the addendum information. I will just run through the application plans. So the application site is the former Master Brewer site in Hillingdon Circus. These are the site constraints. Apologies that the map should have been zoomed out a little bit more, but this is Greenbelt land to the east, and the yellow denotes a parking management scheme, or the equivalent of a CPZ, control parking zones. This is the proposed site layout for the application. So the application encompasses a corner of the junction of Freedom Way and Long Lane, and then the majority of the site is to the rear. This, highlighted in blue, is actually council-owned land. The application, I'll just run through, similar to the last one, first floor plans, second floor plans, third floor plans, fourth floor, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth floor plan, and then the roof plan. So it was clear to see, as we went through those plans, that the massing does reduce across the site in various locations, but primarily the greatest mass is contained within the corner junction of the A40 and Long Lane, just to provide some context. If we move to the site elevations, we have north, east, west, south elevations of the application site, and then we have site sections throughout the development. There is a small reference plan at the bottom which members would have seen, which shows where these site sections are taken from within the larger parcel. We have further site sections in different orientations across the site, and this is a landscaping plan. The reason this has been included is because the pack that was put together had only one section of this landscape plan. It was supposed to have 4 sections, but this is the overview, so that hopefully helps you in terms of where the landscaping is proposed to be. Primarily, this is not usable landscaping, but it is a buffer zone, but the primary areas of amenity space are contained in a podium here, and also within podium levels between the fingers of the residential block. I just wanted to provide some comparison slides. The Planning Committee in 2014 resolved to grant planning permission for 2 applications. One was for the Tesco retail store, and the second was for residential blocks. So this just provides some context of what has been resolved to be granted. The planning decision notice was never issued because the Section 106 was never signed. However, we were mindful that these proposals were acceptable. This is just a comparison of the 2014 proposals and then the current application. You'll note that the site area of the 2014 proposals was actually larger and included the land at Friesland Way. However, this is a denser development in a smaller area. Apologies if that's too simplistic a summary. This is a section through the site, so this is looking north. This is a section through the site looking towards the A40. So the top slide shows what was resolved to be granted in 2014. You can just about make out the Tesco store to the left and the residential blocks adjoining the Greenbelt land. This is the current application and its massing and form. And this is a view looking into the site from the Greenbelt along the eastern elevations. I did want to point out here that the 2014 proposals were granted permission to have residential development adjoining the Greenbelt, and whilst their position is fairly similar to the previous locations, I think it's useful to note that the quantum in elevational terms has increased, if that's hopefully that's visible. We'll take you through some site photos. So that's the application site as an aerial. The site looking to the southwest. That is a view looking onto Long Lane. This is towards the. It's taken from the entrance of the site looking towards the A40, albeit you can't see the A40 in the distance. This is a site from Long Lane. So this is a useful image. So you're on the Long Lane bridge looking into the application site. That's the application premises at Friesland Way. And again, this tries to denote how much existing tree cover there is at the application site. And that's looking into the Greenbelt. The original submission was lodged in August 2017 for 377 units. Amendments were subsequently submitted to the original scheme in March 2018 for 363 units, and again in August 2018 the scheme was amended to provide 359 units. These 2 iterations have now been amended and replaced with the November 2018 current scheme, which is the one that's been presented on the screen, and this current proposal is for 437 units. Whilst no objection is raised to the principle of development, the application site is a site allocation in the emerging documents and has also been a site allocation in our adopted plans since 1998. However, it's considered that the size and scale of the development, as proposed, is inconsistent with the scale and function of the existing local centre. The development would be out of keeping with the density, character and appearance of the area. The heightened bulk of the proposed development will appear visually prominent, to the detriment of the open character of the adjoining Greenbelt. whilst disabled access within the site is considered unsatisfactory. Just to highlight what this is referring to, take you back to a site location. This is probably the best plan. In order to access the podium level amenity space, so that's the communal amenity for the proposed development, obviously a podium is set at what is the equivalent of first floor level. The disabled access is at a gradient of 1 to 20, which is technically policy compliant, but the concern that the council's officers have raised is that you are required to manoeuvre up and down in order to get to that level at a gradient of 1 to 20. So that is the concern with that reason for refusal. The application also fails to demonstrate that the proposal would not result in an unacceptable rise in traffic in and around the application site, potentially causing severe impacts to the free flow of traffic, as well as to highway and pedestrian safety. Furthermore, on parking provision for the residential element, it's considered to be inadequate and insufficient to address the demands of the proposed development in accordance with our local policies. The scheme fails to retain and utilise landscape features of merit, hence the reason that I tried to display as many photos of existing trees on the site. The scheme has also failed to satisfactorily address drainage and flood-related issues. In addition, given the lack of detailed information that the provision of carbon offset contribution has not currently been secured by way of a legal agreement, the development is not policy compliant, and it fails to satisfactorily address the issues relating to mitigation. Furthermore, it's considered that the application has failed to establish the proposed residential units can be sited, designed, insulated or otherwise protected from external noise sources. And in this location, those noise sources are quite significant insofar as the A40 and Long Lane are its primary elevations. Since planning obligations have also not been secured, this is an additional reason for refusal. The application is being recommended for refusal.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 petitions. I believe we have 2 speakers, so there are 10 minutes in total. Well, you've got 10 minutes in total. However you divide it, I will leave it up to you. So we will start and then you can work your way along.
Good evening. I'm Jill Dalton speaking on behalf of Ickenham Residents Association, which represents around 2/3 of Ickenham households. Councillors, this application should be refused because it is a gross overdevelopment of the site. The current London plan sets residential density guidelines based on location, existing building form and massing, and public transport accessibility. Master Borough is unquestionably in a suburban area, so the London plan suggests 50 to 95 homes per hectare. This application proposes an eye-watering 173 homes per hectare, a density level within the London plan range for central London. Why is the density a problem? Firstly, because in order to achieve this density, the applicants propose tall buildings which will dwarf the neighbouring buildings around Hillingdon Circus. It would be completely out of character within the area. Our local plan protects against such gross anomalies to preserve Hillingdon's suburban character, and so the application fails to meet this standard too. Secondly, the tall buildings will form a blot on our landscape. Views from the neighbouring streets, Hillingdon House Farm and other nearby greenbelt land, the Ickenham Conservation Area and roads leading to the site, Long Lane and the A40, will be permanently marred. Our local plan seeks to protect these views. Thirdly, quality of living on the proposed estate will be below the standards set for the borough. There will be insufficient amenity space and, because of its location in an air quality managed area where air pollution limits are exceeded, the value of that space would be poor, exacerbated by road noise from the A40 and Friesland Way. The application proposes no mitigation for these serious public health issues. Safety will also be compromised. Only 1 staircase per tower block is proposed, whereas recommendations following the Grenfell disaster say that 2 should be provided. Space for parking on this overdevelopment is another issue. By our calculations, the number of car spaces proposed for residents is 256. That's 0.6 of a space per home, and 9 spaces for the retail units. In a city centre, this might be acceptable, but as we all know, Hillingdon residents rely on their cars to get to work more than any other London borough, so we can expect far more cars and spaces when the estate is fully occupied. What will happen to the excess? Will they be parked in the very few remaining unrestricted neighbouring streets? The application is silent on this matter, which leads on to traffic. We do not know what the impact of traffic generated by the proposed development will be on local road congestion. We don't know because the applicants haven't fully completed their traffic assessment, or if they have done it, they haven't made the results public. We do know that traffic in the area is at a virtual standstill during peak periods, so for this reason alone the application should be rejected. Now, the applicants may claim that they must build all these homes in order to solve the housing shortage in the south east. That is not their role. The borough has the responsibility for fulfilling its quota and is quite capable of succeeding without overdevelopment such as this. Ickenham has more than played its part in recent years. Since 2012, some 650 homes have been built or permissioned in Ickenham, about 1/6 of the target for the borough, even though the population of the ward is only about 1/25. The housing density improves the profitability of the proposals to the developer, but they cannot with justification claim that they cannot afford to build fewer homes, as they had every opportunity to plan for the existing standards and planning guidance which were in place when they acquired the site, and they should have valued it accordingly. So, councillors, you should reject this application because it offends the local street scene by its bulk, height and design. Its profile would forever mar the skyline. The quality of life for residents would be poor because of pollution and sparsity of amenity space. Car parking provision would be completely inadequate. They haven't properly assessed the traffic impact on local roads, and for all these reasons it flies in the face of our local plan and the current London plan upon which we depend to maintain the quality of the built environment and in Hillingdon. We look forward to working with the developers in the future to develop a more suitable scheme. Hopefully next time they will listen to suggestions from the local community who have proposed an alternative scheme with community facilities, houses as well as flats, and generous amenity space linked to a new public park. That's a scheme we could support. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you very much. I'm Jane Turnbull. I'm representing Oak Farm Residents Association, who represent a large part of the Hillingdon East Ward. We fully support the points presented by Ickenham Residents Association and don't wish to repeat them. But I will say, to be acceptable to the local community, any proposed development would have to demonstrate very clearly that it will harmonise with the townscape of the local area and the capacity of local services and road network to cope. The Hillingdon East Ward is characterised by 2- and 3-storey pitched roof buildings and garden estates. Hillingdon Borough's 2017 figures show that less than 15% of about 5,000 households were flats or maisonettes, and that includes those in commercial buildings. So the proposed development would heavily impact on the character of the area. The photos of the surrounding areas submitted by your officers and by the developers themselves in 2017 and 18 clearly show that most of the existing building is in harmony with the established tree lines and the open vistas. The proposed increase in scale to nearly 3 times the height of the buildings in Friesland Way and Hillingdon Circus is too great. These blocks are going to dwarf their surroundings. We would also like to draw councillors' attention to the detailed objections made in October by the London Wildlife Trust concerning the loss of biodiversity and character. Their surveys clearly state that more detailed site assessments are needed, and to date there's been no further assessment of the implications on local wildlife. Chairman, this site lies between 2 established suburban semi-rural communities. Shouldn't a gateway be another garden estate connecting them, not a city centre tower block estate to overpower and divide them? Thank you very much.
speaking on behalf of the occupants of Ickenham Manor and Long Lane Farm. We're objecting because the views from Ickenham Manor and Long Lane Farm would be severely and permanently marred, as we have shown in the photos that we attached with our objections. The applicants have not even assessed the impact of Long Lane Farm, which would be the worst affected site in Ickenham, and their assessment of the impact on Ickenham Manor is flawed. Ickenham Manor is a Grade 1 listed building set in the Green Belt and Conservation Area, whose land includes the Scheduled Ancient Monument and is a designated site of special architectural importance, so the sensitivity of the site is very high. Contrary to the applicant's claims, the proposed development would be visible from the house, both in the winter, because the trees on the relevant boundary are deciduous, and also in the summer, because most of the trees that there are small elms, dead or dying from Dutch elm disease. A high adverse impact is defined as the addition of uncharacteristic, noticeable features and elements, degrading the integrity and key aesthetic or perceptual qualities. That is clearly the case here. The development would add towers up to 30 metres in height across a considerable arc of the landscape to the southeast, where currently no buildings, save a single communications mast, can be seen. Long Lane Farm is also a historic building, constructed around 1700, at the heart of Ickenham's community. It is in the conservation area and on greenbelt land, so the sensitivity of the site is also high. The visual impact on this site would be even worse than that for Ickenham Manor, because it is closer and there is no vegetation except at very low levels, screening the tall buildings. We therefore ask you to refuse this application, both on the technicality that the visual impact has not been properly assessed by the applicants, but more importantly because a proper assessment would show a high adverse effect on these two highly sensitive sites. Thank you.
Do members have any questions for any of our speakers? I'll pick up the biodiversity point. I think we haven't answered that, but I'll pick that up in a moment. That managed to turn off? Yes, good, thank you. If I could have the agents or the applicants now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Sarah Hiskett and I'm the agent for this application. In my address to the committee this evening, I will set out a summary of the proposal and an overview of the key planning considerations pursuant to the scheme. By way of background, it is important to highlight to the committee that the applicant has undertaken extensive consultation and engagement with the Planning Authority over a period of some 25 months. This has included approximately 8 months of pre-application discussions where the applicant has sought to work collaboratively with officers to progress a detailed proposal to deliver the ambitions of adopted and emerging planning policy for the regeneration of this large, vacant and derelict site which presents a significant development opportunity in North Hillingdon. To achieve this, the application, the subject of this committee, has evolved over time to respond to the feedback provided by officers of the Planning Authority, which has resulted in a series of amendments to the original application proposal submitted in August 2017, with the final iteration of the proposal submitted in November 2018. The current proposal responds to the representations received from local and strategic determining authorities up to November 2018. It should be noted that the applicant has also sought to respond to recent technical comments received from the Planning Authority in the last 2 weeks, which inform the reasons for refusal presented this evening. However, it has been confirmed that the responses and technical clarifications provided will not be considered by officers and are therefore not discussed in the presentation document. Turning to the detail of the proposal, the applicant's vision for Hillingdon Gateway is to deliver a high-quality development that will revitalise a long-term vacant site within North Hillingdon Local Centre, creating a vibrant place to live and work. The key objectives of the proposal include the creation of a new neighbourhood that will complement and enhance the vitality and viability of North Hillingdon Local Centre, the delivery of a mix of uses in a sustainable location that can promote and enhance the existing function of North Hillingdon, whilst providing opportunities for local people to continue to work and live locally, and provision of a range of high-quality new homes, including affordable homes for local people. It is acknowledged that the Planning Authority does not object to the principle of the comprehensive redevelopment of this site and the proposed mix of uses, as established by national, strategic and local level planning policy. In this regard, the proposal is consistent with the aspirations of existing and emerging planning policy for the regeneration of this significant part of North Hillingdon Local Centre. In considering the reasons for refusal identified, the key issues arising relate to massing of the proposed development and matters relating to traffic and parking. The identification of other reasons for refusal are disappointing, as it is considered that these items could be resolved by way of clarification, planning condition or planning obligation. Whilst the key matters of massing, traffic and parking remain points of disagreement with the local authority, it can be demonstrated that the application is informed by sound design principles and robust detailed technical assessments to determine a level of development appropriate for this location. Furthermore, both the Greater London Authority and Transport for London have acknowledged their support for this presented scheme. The proposals informing the principles informing the proposal are also supported by material considerations as well as the planning benefits that will be delivered if the application were to be approved. These include, but are not limited to, the provision of a significant and valuable contribution to local housing supply in accordance with strategic objectives, the provision of policy-compliant affordable housing provision, 35% or 153 units, with the potential for this to be increased to 40%, equating to 147 units, should grant funding be awarded, the provision of family-sized units to meet identified local housing need, provision of affordable workspace and the promotion of local job creation and additional economic spin-off locally, physical regeneration, specifically high-quality modern design, the delivery of a comprehensive landscaping strategy including improved links and access to the adjacent greenbelt and the promotion of environmental improvements, and improvements to the transport network and public transport accessibility. In closing, the applicant has submitted a robust proposal, the principle of which is supported at all levels of planning. Specialist supporting reports in respect of technical policy matters have demonstrated that through the implementation of appropriate mitigation, the impact of the proposal on surrounding local built environment will be low to negligible. And on this basis, the application proposal is considered to accord with all relevant policy objectives and should be approved. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? No? I've just got one. If you've been negotiating for 25 months, you've collected a rather long list of officer refusal reasons, which makes me wonder about the level of engagement you claim to have achieved. But normally, and I've seen an awful lot of these in my time doing this job, normally applicants start with one figure for a development and it works kind of downwards. You seem to have come down and then whacked it up at the end, which seems a slightly unusual way to engage with officers and get approval. Perhaps I'd be grateful for your comments on that.
As stated, we have engaged in lengthy discussions which have sought to address reasons, comments that have been raised throughout this process. The applicant has engaged in order to review that and reduce the number of units as you've stated. However, in doing so and achieving both one-for-one parking provision and a lower level of housing provision, this was also not acceptable to the local authority. And caused a point of difference with the strategic determining authority who could not support a less than efficient use of this type of developable land. So in view of the formal comments that had been received in November 2018, the applicant sought to review the reasons of refusal, review the comments that had been received from the GLA, alongside existing comments that had been received from the local planning authority, to review the mix of units which can promote additional dwellings, which has led to the increase of the number of housing units to 437, but also reinstate height in sensitive locations as considered by technical documents to support the efficient use of land.
Don't think that quite answers my question, but I think I get the point. I'll move on. We've no councillors looking to come in. Councillor Bridges, the ward councillor, can I have your contribution?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, on behalf of myself and Councillor Jackson as councillors for Hillingdon East Ward, I'm speaking this evening to oppose the application. Taking into consideration the height and density of this proposal, we consider this as an urban design, which would have a significant and negative impact on the local community. Many residents consider this as an overdevelopment, and in doing so is out of character with Hillingdon Circus and North Hillingdon in general. An overdevelopment on this scale does not fully take into consideration the additional strains on our local infrastructure, from GP surgeries to schools and highways. Furthermore, with the inadequate parking provided in this proposal, the residential areas surrounding this site, such as those on the Oak Farm estate, would certainly act as the overflow for these additional vehicles. And for the potential residents who would reside in these units, their quality of life may also be impacted, as highlighted in the report to this committee, where it confirms that a comprehensive noise report has not been provided. and in not doing so have failed to demonstrate that these units can be protected from external noise sources to both national and local standards, particularly the heavy flow of traffic from the A40 along with the high levels of pollution, one of the worst in our borough after Heathrow. As a ward councillor for the area, I also understand the concerns and frustrations of local residents regarding the heavy traffic on Long Lane, which is experienced on a daily basis during rush hour. Soon to become worse with the construction work of HS2, and with additional development of this size, it will no doubt have a significant impact to an already gridlocked area. The concerns from local residents in both the past and present applications for this site have expressed strong opposition to overdevelopment that would have a negative impact on our community. As shown with the current application, these concerns continue to be ignored, and in fact, rather than listening to these concerns, the number of units have instead increased to 437. And I do acknowledge that this site has been vacant for many years, and I do hope in time, eventually, a sensible and pragmatic development will be proposed. But this evening, Mr. Chairman, the application before us is far from it. So in closing, we welcome the officer's recommendations for refusal for the reasons shown in the report and strongly encourage the committee to refuse the application.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, I'll open it up. Councillor Edwards, you're going to start off, then Councillor Oswald, I think looks like he's indicated, then Councillor Morse. We'll go that way.
I will make a comment rather than ask a question, and that is that as a planning authority here, I believe that we must consider the application before us in the context of our own policies. If the Mayor of London wishes to exercise his powers and grant planning permission determined by a different set of rules, then that is a matter for him, and I hope will be reflected in the ballot in due course. What we are very clear on is what is in the interests of Hillingdon, and our policies are pretty straightforward in that regard. I take nothing away from the representations made by the petitioner and the local councillor, and that is regard the detrimental impact on the residents. And I'm also clear that actually the parking standard, we are fully aware of what happens in our own borough and the reliance of motor vehicle, and the parking provision here is woefully inadequate, and therefore I am I will be agreeing with the officer's recommendations.
Okay, Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I won't repeat some of what Councillor Evans has just said, no point. I mean, I'm not against a development on this site in principle. It just all depends what it is. Another comprehensive report, but I'm afraid it's out of policy, Chairman. And I won't go on because I'll just be repeating what Councillor Evans has said. So I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Councillor Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I found the comments from the Ickenham residents particularly interesting because I think they were correct. It is an isolated piece of land. So whoever lived on there would need amenity space, and they put forward the prospect that some of the land there could be used for amenity space. It's quite clear the amenity space is not acceptable. And what you have to understand is that it would only ever be considered acceptable any near this low if it was a high quality design. This is not.
Thank you. I'm just going to go back to the head of planning because there was a query raised about biodiversity in one of the presentations which I said I'd pick up. I think the head of planning has an answer, but let's just take that now.
Yeah, so there's 2 points to bear in mind. Firstly, the Council's sustainability officers happy with the principle of accepting a financial contribution towards ecological mitigation. But secondly, when committee looked at this site in 2014, the committee also accepted the principle of a financial contribution dealing with ecological mitigation. And refusal reason 10, which sets out the obligations we'd be seeking, does include ecological mitigation. So hopefully that addresses that, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Edwards?
In the absence of any further questions from councillors, I would move the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. As varied by the addendum, of course.
Councillor
Oswald, I think, was just about next. It was close.
Yeah, I'm happy to second the recommendation.
We are proposed and seconded that the application be refused for the reasons given in the report as varied by the addendum. Can all those in favour of refusal please clearly indicate to me? Thank you. That one is refused. Thank you. Right, we need to find Councillor Chapman, yeah. Right, we now have a full complement of planners back. Councillor Chapman's had his break, so thank you. Right, I'm now moving back to deal with the rest of tonight's agenda. No petitions on the rest of it, so it's straightforward officer presentations. In fact, some of it, those of you who've been on here for a while will have seen at least once before. The first item now up is item 7, the John Crank Building, Brunel, and that isn't one that you've actually done before, though you've done a lot in Brunel.
Thank you, Chair. Members, please note there is an addendum which is seeking primarily to provide clarifications and corrections. One of the things I did want to highlight is that we are seeking to amend the description of development. It should always have stated that the proposal was for 7,685 square metres of floor space, not 7,300 as it's been published. So we're just trying to make sure that the description that we give consent for is accurate. I'll take you through the presentation. So Brunel University, it is an established site within Greenbelt. We have had a fair few presentations of different various applications in the past. This one is slightly unique in that the application site is the John Crank Building. The quad area, I'll take you to some photos. This is communal amenity for students, and this is a listed building. We go through the proposals. These are the existing elevations. So as existing, whilst the building at the first 2 levels is short and long, it does actually contain a 7-storey element within its central section. So from the courtyard, this is what you see, and we will take you through some photographs. The proposal is to demolish the existing building within the campus and propose a new learning and technical centre. So these are the proposed ground floor plans, first floor plans, second floor plans, third, fourth. And I'm not sure if it's overly clear, but the 5th floor cuts back here. So the 5th floor is only this section of the building, and again at 6th floor it's a smaller footprint. This is the roof plan, and this is the elevation. So if you were standing within the courtyard, if you were standing at the halls of residence, this is the elevation that you would be seeing. So essentially it's the rear of the building. These are the flank elevations to the north, flank to the south, and then this is the front elevation that you would see from the courtyard. These are some proposed sections and use of materials. Our conservation and design team have worked extensively through pre-applications and at application stage to make sure that the proposed building is having no adverse impact on the listed building which adjoins it, hence the reason for the various setbacks, and there are sensitive uses proposed. So this is the setback I'm referring to that was sought through our discussions at pre-application stage in order to minimise the impact on the listed building. So go through some photographs. So this is the quad that I was referring to. At the moment, it's not a very accessible space. The steps, there are an extensive number of steps which lead down to a grassed lawn. The proposals would actually infill the whole of what is now called the quad to a surface level area, which would then allow a much more usable space. This is the listed building which adjoins the site. Again, the steps are along the front of this listed building, but this would all be brought to grade to provide a more usable space. This is the existing front or quad elevation of the John Crank building, so you can see the taller element sitting alongside the smaller building, and that's the existing John Crank building set against the listed building. This is the rear of what I will otherwise call the rear of the property, and that's a service road which does provide some existing parking at the moment, and these are halls of residence in the yellow brick buildings. Again, so this is a different view. The listed building is on the left and the John Crank building is on the right. Another view with the John Crank on the right hand side. So this is a visual of the proposed building. Again, as I mentioned, what we wanted to try and achieve was that this new building didn't compete with the listed building, and hence the conservation team did work extensively with the applicants to try and push this down so that this remained the prominent listed building and heritage asset. This shows the levelling out of the courtyard to make it a more usable space. So we do feel that this is a key benefit of the scheme, that not only are they providing the learning and technical educational facilities, there's also commensurate external space being improved and given back to the students. This is the CGI of the pedestrian spine road, which is sought to be improved as part of the works. And you can see that there is a double height atrium just to provide a sense of space at ground level, and the elevation along Lancaster Road with the residential halls of residence located on the right. The lecture block on the listed building on the left and the proposed building on the right, and vice versa in this image. So we were trying to improve the usability of this area.
Run out of time. Okay, let me do it.
We'll go through the pictures in a minute. The application seeks full permission for the erection of the new Learning and Technical Centre, and the application is supported. It is a previously major developed site within the Greenbelt. The proposal represents sustainable development on land that's previously developed and constitutes limited infill. Although the proposed building will be larger, it will not be materially greater in terms of its impact on the openness of the Greenbelt than the existing development. It's therefore not deemed to be inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. The application, from a design perspective, the sensitivity of the site has been addressed through the materials, the landscaping and massing of the proposed new building. The proposal will improve the relationship between the quad, the built form and the adjoining listed building. Once operational, development is likely to have limited effect on designated landscapes, including the Greenbelt. The application accordingly is recommended for approval.
I wanted to say one quick comment. I wanted to commend this scheme to committee for one particular reason, that the developer has listened to all the pre-application advice from officers and has followed that advice, and it has been appreciated.
Right, Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Morse.
Thank you very much. I was going to say, it appears to me that this is a product of some good work between developer and local authority. The CGIs reflect very well how the design integrates with the existing buildings, and the concern regarding the Greenbelt, the difference in height is such that it's not going to be noticeable from outside the estate at all, and therefore I have no reason to overturn the officers, and I actually wholeheartedly support it.
Councillor Moss?
Yes, I agree. Having looked at the John Crank building for 20 years, it was an awful thing, and quite frankly this is a substantial improvement, and on the basis that PR22 allows us to the university pursue academic pursuits, I'm quite happy with this. I just have one question. The flood officer notes that there is clearly a need to update the university master plan to provide a strategic manner including the flood and drainage issues. Is that in progress? I was on page 139. Sorry.
Thank you for the helping me with the pages.
Yeah, so I do read stuff. Yes, 139, it's
okay, yep, I've seen it. There is 2 conditions with regard to sustainable water management and flood evacuation have been imposed as part of the proposed conditions for accepting this scheme. I wonder if the head of planning or Maddox got any other comment.
I am aware that the flood and water management officer is because obviously we get regular proposals from Brunel University, is in regular discussion with the university concerning the strategic flood and water management issues. As the chairman mentioned, there are conditions to cover the sustainable water management and flood evacuation, but I guess it's a simple yes is the answer to your question.
Okay. I've just drawn it to your attention.
That's fine. In that case, there are no other hands. Will somebody give you a proposal? Thank you, Councillor.
I'll second.
Because you didn't get there last time. Okay, so I proposed and seconded that officer's recommendation be accepted as varied by the addendum. All those in favour, please clearly indicate to me. Thank you very much. That one's approved. I would also add my comments that this looks like a high-quality scheme which does appear to have been the product of productive working and dialogue, and we're always very pleased to support Brunel University in its aims where we can. Can I now move to item 8? Item 8 is Access House. It's one of those that we have seen before. This is a change to something that has already been agreed by this committee. So we'll be concentrating obviously on the changes to it, not on what you already agreed, because that's agreed.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is Access House. It's located on the northern side of Bath Road. And as Councillor Lavery mentioned, we have already granted permission fairly recently for the erection of a hotel on this site. So I've put together some comparison slides just for clarification on how the scheme has changed. So if you do want to go back through all of the proposed plans that are in your pack, I can do so. So the applicants have actually done half the work for us. They've denoted the site in red. I'm not sure if that comes through on your plan packs. If I go through some comparison slides, so the approved drawings are set out on the top and the proposed scheme is set out underneath. So there is an additional built form at roof level, which is the recessed set-in top floor. It's very hard to see, but there is still a plant room proposed, albeit slightly smaller and more centrally located on the building. Comparative slides on the proposals from Egerton Way. Again, the additional mass is setback from the Egerton Way elevation, and the top plan shows the approved drawings. This is a comparison slide of the impact or a section through the site. So these properties shown here on the right are the Egerton Way properties. This is the wrong way around. This is the approved plan, and this is the proposed development. So it's primarily at this level. The built form, which directly faces onto the residential properties, is not increasing. Accordingly, the application is recommended for approval.
And there is an addendum which is primarily housekeeping, I think is the phrase used, is it not? It doesn't change anything. It's housekeeping and tidying up of conditions.
If I can just help committee. The committee were interested previously in all the landscaping to the rear and the sort of details of drop-off, etc. off at Egerton Way. That's unchanged. So it's the increase in building height that is the change.
Councillor Oswald?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I don't see that it's going to be too much difference, quite frankly. I'm quite happy with that. I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Yarrow? Are you going to...
I'll take that one, yeah.
Thank you. No other comments, I don't think. All those in favour, please clearly show me. Thank you very much. That one is approved. Now move to what I believe is the final item of the night, but someone will tell me if I've got it wrong. 297 Long Lane, Hillingdon. This is also a scheme that you've seen before. This is an increase of 3 units on what was previously agreed. So again, the officer will take, I believe, a similar approach in terms of giving you the differences rather than the whole thing.
So this application is, or the drawings lodged with the application are quite useful. They have actually denoted where the changes are by virtue of dotting them out in red. So the application is increasing the quantum of development by 3 additional residential units. The number of car parking is also increasing accordingly. So if we go through the application site, the red dotted line denotes what we approved at the top floor of this building. The additional built form is therefore the areas outside of that dotted red line. We take you through some sections. Again, the red dotted line is the previously approved scheme with the additional built form visible on the east, semi-visible on the south, and then again on the western elevation. So these are photos of the existing application site. I believe the building has been demolished, so these built, and these are properties of Tudor Way or adjoining the site directly, and that's the local centre directly, going to say opposite the application site. Now the application by virtue of having been approved previously, we had a financial viability appraisal which deemed the application's proposal to be unviable, but we did manage to secure an in lieu off-site contribution of £100,000 for affordable housing. The addition of these 3 residential units has increased that off-site contribution to £215,000, and therefore it is deemed to be appropriate and acceptable by virtue of the contributions secured, 1-for-1 car parking, and the development bulk and form not being substantially different by virtue of not being a reason for refusal on this scheme. The application is recommended for approval.
Thank you. One minor question before I open it for members. I think the S106 parking permits condition needs amendment, because I don't think that's our standard one.
If you could
delegate it to the head of planning, I will.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I'll delegate that to the head of planning to sort, but apart from that. Right, who wants to take me on this one? Councillor Edwards, followed by Councillor Yarrow, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. Minor change, doesn't have any particular impact in terms of residents or outlook or street scene, and therefore I'd move officer's recommendation.
And I'll second that. I've had notice in my ward, and I'd see no problems with it at all.
Okay, no other hands are raised. We're proposed and seconded to accept the officer proposal with the change that we delegate the head of planning just to tidy up condition 4 of the S106 agreement. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much indeed. We're closed at 20 to 8. Thank you all for your diligence, and my thanks to the officer team for the excellent presentations tonight.